This is another SeerJS meetup for June 2022. Go around the room and on Zoom. I'm leading the meeting. Going to probably be a little bit of a shorter one this week. I didn't finish everything I needed to finish for the talk, so I'm going to push that out to another meeting. I've been working with JavaScript for a long time and worked with a bunch of other competing popular frameworks and languages over the years. I'll pass it on.
I'm Matt. I work as a software engineer. Most of my work is in Vue, building software. I am wanting to get better at JavaScript. Yeah, it's me.
My name is Mike. I do freelance WordPress, and I also want to get better at JavaScript too.
Just, yeah.
And I'm Doug. I've been playing with JavaScript for years and using vanilla JavaScript with some for some of my freelance work in front end design. I've just this session taken the Careers in Code boot camp, which is helping me put everything I know sort of in place. And we just started React. That's my first JavaScript framework. Well, that's not true. I played with jQuery way back, but and I also would like to get better at JavaScript.
All right. So we'll kick off the meeting here. We'll go ahead and I need to share screen.
Do the whole screen.
I should do the whole screen.
That way you don't have any weird swap issues.
There you go. So from last time, we had the exercises. Like Caleb said in Slack, the difficulty was a little bit out of whack. Easy was really more of a medium, and medium was really more of a very difficult.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. It and I don't even think, yeah, he didn't even actually finish his hard. So it was a bit of a tough one. The key to the easy is that, so it actually is that you can't really just generate an array of digits from 1 to 9. They need to be solvable in terms of Sudoku, which makes it a little bit more complex. So instead of having necessarily like an array of a random 1 to 9, you would probably want to just like have an array and then randomly pick an index from inside of it rather than like fill an array 1 to 9.
In terms of Sudoku, right?
Mhm.
It you can't have a repeating number for a solvable row, right? It's not the only requirement for a row of digits.
Well, it has to be, so the row has to be solvable, the column has to be solvable, and then the internal square has to be solvable.
Right.
So that is the major problem with medium, is that like in order to make a solvable Sudoku in this method, you actually have to make an exhaustive depth first search through all possible numbers, which makes it a little bit time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
And complicated to actually solve the medium. There may be a better way to do it. It's something that comes up building chess AI, right? Like having how many moves ahead the computer can think, how deep on each particular pass for any given random 1 through 9 digit do you want it to solve? Because you could try to have it solve from first number, try to solve the whole thing. And if it's solvable, I guess that could be the result. So it's
Hey, can I interrupt just for a second? I just saw on Slack that Kyle is downstairs in the elevator.
all right.
Sorry for the interruption.
No. Thank you. That is very important because I'm not looking at Slack right now. Did you have a solution to this one, Doug?
I did not. Careers in Code has been owning most of my time.
Yeah.
I've fallen behind on the Sudoku challenges, but I'd like to go back to where I dropped off and work my way up.
Hey, sorry.
I did do, I don't know if it's along the same lines, but I did one that would solve a Sudoku given like a starting pattern. It would then, and it was really just trial and error. It kept creating new branches. And if it ran into an impossibility, it would double back to the last legitimate list. And then if it had to, it would end up snaking back to, a couple of rows, but it'd go row by row, column by column, and check every square against box, column, and rows that were there so far. And it ended up filling in, but I don't know if it would work to generate a puzzle on its own.
Right.
That methodology is the way that I would imagine we would solve the puzzle. And realistically, I don't really know any other way that we could really do it without really sophisticated data analysis. But I agree that, I think from what I heard, my familiarity with Sudoku is that there's a certain artistic way that Sudokus are generated. There's more to it than simple math. So I'm kind of curious to see what generated puzzles, if they would be way too easy, way too difficult, or tedious.
I'd be curious if you could implement once you have a solution, if you could implement a difficulty adjustment. So you
Yeah.
easy version and medium version.
Sure. And it may be that starting from a if you wanted to generate a solvable Sudoku, that you start from a solved Sudoku and then slowly peel back. If you wanted to randomly generate one where you're removing a certain number of numbers, that could potentially be a valid solution. So you're not starting from like depth first for each random number that you're putting into the grid, having to see if it's solvable. It just seems like it's very brute force sort of way to go about it.
So it actually looks like I have a relatively close solution to the first one. I felt that I was fairly easy.
Sure.
I mean, easy-ish. So I was okay with that one. And then the medium one, I felt like I got close, but then it felt like it should have been easier, and I feel like I was over-engineering it. And yeah, it was really hard. I was able to basically, I have a function that you pass the entire matrix back into it, as well as the current row that you're on. So it would have an array of predetermined numbers 1 through 9, and then it would just randomly pick from them, and it would also check the columns above that one. So I was only checking horizontally and vertically. I was not checking within the squares. But I ran into an issue where towards the end of an array, it would return undefined because it would say, there's only a 1 left in the array, but actually there's a 1 above, and they would cancel out and return as undefined. So my attempt to solve that was to then go back in the row and shuffle up the numbers and try to do it that way, but I didn't like that solution, and I never went back to try and figure out another solution to that.
Do you have that in GitHub?
I
at
do
all?
have it in GitHub, yeah.
Can you actually,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, you can see that.
send me the link.
No, just pull it up on GitHub, I think, unless you want me to run it.
Do you have the URL?
Yeah, what is the
No.
URL? What is your
Matt 148.
Matt?
148, yeah, 148. I think that's right. Yep. And then go to repositories.
Great photo.
There you go. Thank you. Then I say just JS meetup. And then yeah. No.
Okay.
So yeah, so the first one was pretty straightforward. Just a predefined array of 1 to 9, and then that random array is the actual array that would be spit out. I have a for loop that goes from 1 to 9. I decided to go from 1 to 9 instead of 0 to 8 just to make it a little bit easier on myself. I generate a random number using the number array length, and then I push that random number that I generated, or not the random array, but I generate a reference using that random number. I grab that number out of the number array, I push it into the random array, and I remove it from the number array, and then I do it again. Basically just removing numbers from the first array and adding them to the second array, which generates a 1 through 9 randomly generated in that random array, which is a solvable row of Sudoku. That one I felt was relatively straightforward. The second one was where I got tripped up. So I have sort of a similar solution for the second one if you scroll down on the medium one. So down farther. So I have 2 functions. Mind if I drive actually? Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Opposite. So this is the original function that is used to call the testing and everything. So I do another for loop to get all the rows, and then I created a function that would generate each of the rows, and I have an array of arrays for my matrix, and I'm pushing the result of this function into that. I'm passing the current matrix object, matrix array, sorry, into here, as well as the current row that we're on. And then this is that function that I created that generates the row. So again, I have the pre-laid out numbers here, and I have that array that we're going to return, which is just the row. For the first row, because there's no rows above it, I just generate a random row, just like I did before up top. If after that, it becomes a little bit harder, so I create a array to hold up the numbers above the current column that we're in. And then I loop through the matrix and go through each of the rows in that matrix. And then I take the current B is the column number, which is right there. Sorry, I forgot. I looped through the columns in the row, and I push any numbers that are above that current current column that we're in into that array, and then I get the difference between the number array, which is up top, this number array, and the column numbers, and I get the difference between them so I can know what numbers I'm allowed to pick from. And then I go ahead and pick from, I think this right here was an attempt to solve that undefined issue. So it's a little ugly. So I think we can ignore that. But basically I use that difference to generate another random number or a reference to the number. And then I put that into the random array and return that random array. So it generates a row at a time. And I felt like this should work, but it would just get to the end and it would start returning undefined. And I'm not 100% sure why that was happening.
That pattern that you had on top of the shuffling, so to speak, like pouring 2 glasses of water into one another. I recognize that pattern, and I believe that is the de facto way to brute force in the way that we are trying to, the way that Doug characterized, and the way that I think of it too, it's like the only way to do the type of brute forcing that we were talking about. Is that correct? Are you familiar with that pattern?
No, I'm not. This is me just flapping around.
I think if you look up a pattern to do the kind of brute at the point we're verbalizing, that you see that you find that pattern.
Mm-hmm. It feels like this should work, but I think there's something. There's something about Sudoku that I'm missing. That because like when I did it, I just did it on paper. I did a simple 4x4 grid. I tried to just do it by hand, which obviously is not random at all, but that generated a grid that was solvable in Sudoku. Obviously, it was just horizontal and vertical. It was not within the square. So yeah, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be when we first talked about the problem.
So I think based on what I'm seeing here, the reason you're sometimes getting undefined might be this different dot length. So when you're doing this here to see if it's undefined,
Yeah.
So this can be outside the range
Yes.
of the indexes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to say do something, I think the hack way to do that would be to do something like unprincipled, but is busy that. At which case it can no longer be outside of the bound, whatever. It's
Right, specific length does not actually equal because of the it's zero based rather than
Right. Right.
the length is not zero based.
Can we run that? I don't know if you can run this.
I feel like I tried that and it didn't work.
You feel like you tried this and it didn't work? Like
Yeah.
you're still getting an undefined at times?
Yeah, I'm still getting undefined. I think. Can't remember. It's been a little while.
Okay, potentially, because you would also have to run into an issue where if you started at 0, that would be -1. Let's suppose if you started at 1 with your number array,
Oh,
that might work. But here you'd be out of bounds in the other direction and have a negative index.
okay.
You know what I hate when you run into problems like this, and then you try taking away 1, still doesn't work, and then for some reason you take away 2, and it works perfectly. You actually know anyway.
Sure.
That's what I hate most.
It's best not to try to understand code.
Is
You can never understand it.
that a pro tip?
That's a pro tip.
That's a pro tip. Just don't bother understanding.
There's no
what the code
point.
does.
But then you wind up with a function that handles something. The function you already wrote that handles something that you're also handling in another place. And you realize that, like, oh well, I got to handle them both these ways, but I'm just not going to change it, and then we're finished.
It's fine. It's fine. You just don't look at it.
But we're done. I made a mistake. We're done.
You can. I'm not sure. Can you run this in here?
I don't believe that you can run this.
Okay. Without pulling it down.
Without pulling it down.
Okay. Never mind. 'Cause I log out that matrix.
You guys want to start using containers for this meetup?
Ooh,
Oh. There you go.
Oh,
I need to learn how to do it.
it wouldn't be hard. I mean, I wish I was more familiar. If I was more familiar with what we were doing, then I would be able to pop in the container for a few.
Sure. So this is just running. You're right. This is running some
Something that says
exports.
JavaScript.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It's probably be a node container.
I think it's just running the test suite.
Yeah. Hard. The README says what you need to do. I forget what it is. It's related to the file name.
Yeah. All right. Test.
2022-05-main. Why not?
Permission denied, so try sudo.
All right. I don't know. Indeed.
Oh, but here.
All right.
We can run a node, we can run node containers.
There we go. I just didn't npm myself. Classic blunder. Sure.
I didn't think there was anything. Of course, there's a package, so there is something to install. Huh? Oh, there we go. So scroll up a little bit. So the easy one passed. That right there, that table is the matrix that has been generated. Those blank spots are the undefineds. And it's always at the end.
Okay.
So basically what happens is the only available number here, actually, I think it's a 1. It should be at that last one. So that one actually, oh no, I take it back. What is it? No, yes, it is. On line 4, I think it's a 1 that should be there.
Line 4 where? Here?
Yeah, row 4.
Okay.
I think it's a 1, which actually doesn't make sense why that would be turned undefined because there aren't any 1s above it. So that should have just worked
Below it.
below. It wouldn't look below.
Oh,
It's only above.
okay.
It's not that smart.
Okay. All right. So if we do the little change, am I too high or I need to be lower? No.
You did do the -1, didn't you? Or no, that's on.
That was on the web. So where is here?
Dot length.
That. So there we go. Look at my own screen. That again. What do we get? Any different? Yeah, subtly different.
Weird, skip snap. Yeah, you can see I was like logging and trying to write out what was happening.
And do you have Docker on your computer or computers, any of your computers?
And
Do you have Docker installed on any of your computers?
I do have Docker in this.
Andrew, Drew, do you?
Yeah, why?
Well, Doug, do you have Docker installed on your computers? Any of them?
What is the software?
Docker,
Docker?
like
Docker.
the container end. No?
No, I don't even know it.
All right. What do you run? Windows?
No, I'm on a Mac.
All right. So I'm pretty sure if we had a simple dependencies file and we packaged our repos with a dependencies file, we pushed our dependencies or our repos with a dependency and source, we could pull an npm Docker container and we could all pass the same arguments to the container to run all of our applications. I don't know, is that a terrible idea?
I think it's a little overkill for this,
Alright.
because we have package.json, which actually does have the dependencies.
Oh,
that we
no,
need.
we don't. Go, sorry, Matt.
I just forgot to run npm install
Oh.
after I get cloned. This repo, yeah.
All right,
So-
so we have this IDE that we use to do what I'm describing would be done with the container.
Package.json. It's the do you use Composer?
Yeah, I've used it.
npm is the composer for Node.
Right.
So, we put all of our dependencies in here, and then so we have these dev dependencies, file
What's running
system,
Node?
Jest, path, the node on my local machine
Okay.
right now. But you could stick the node server inside of Docker for sure.
So you just install to a directory. Like for example, like Matt, the table that you pulled up, I don't want to hijack the meetup, but you now on your machine, correct if I'm wrong, the library that was his dependency is now on your personal machine. Is that correct?
Correct, in this repository.
All right. I mean, if you know, the advantage of the containers is that we wouldn't need to do that anymore. We would be able to spin up the container, install the dependencies, run the code, kill the container.
Sure.
So that would be the advantage of that. So I'll stop hijacking for Docker.
Just be an evangelist.
Well, I knew I was hijacking the meetup. I was like, let's talk about Docker. Let's talk about all the advantages of Docker and all the great ways that you can Docker up some things.
I mean, if you want to talk about Dockerizing the JavaScript applications, like we can do that in the future for sure.
I mean, if I find that I have some time, I'll definitely message you guys for some of well, I'll go to your repos and I'll pull in your projects and I'll get them running.
As far as tonight's problem, I misspoke. I think I do actually have a solution for it that I did for one of the earlier ones. Can I send you a link
Should be able to
you can
share.
pull up?
Yeah, if you can send the link through Zoom chat, and I will open it up.
Just to round off what I was saying, Node has an official container.
Yes.
Ah.
And you wouldn't have issues with like Node versions on the local machine.
I like how your URL was Megadug.
Yeah, I was once upon a time, I called my business Megalomedia and I snoozed on the URL. And then when I finally went to get it, it said Megadug's available. And I thought for a couple of seconds and grabbed it.
Very cool.
Did you go to your old business URL and find something less than wholesome?
No, it was some other company, but I really couldn't tell what they did.
Oh, okay.
That's very
You should have offered to buy it back from them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would go at a rate that I could offer, but
You say $10 and then they just,
and I just call myself Megadug now, so
it works.
yeah.
So this is just for the media. Oh no, you have easy right there. Okay.
So this was actually for one of the challenges, I think in March, but one of the things that you had to do was test for legitimate rows, columns, and squares. And I couldn't think of any way to test it aside from generating a board. So I built a thing to generate the board.
So what is the solution to generating a solvable Sudoku board?
So that I don't know. This just generates a board. I don't know which tiles you would have to reveal to make it solvable.
Hmm.
Like this just generates a legal matrix.
So once you have that, the solution is that once you have the solved matrix that is legal and fits all the parameters, you have to slowly take away numbers and make sure that you haven't
To make it harder.
ambiguity. Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to leave enough there that it's solvable, right?
But it's solvable and there's no ambiguous squares.
Right, so it can only be solved one way.
One way. That's the idea.
Yeah, that I did not get that far. I only got as far as generating the board,
So
which
for just generating a board without the missing squares. How?
so this was a couple of months ago. I think if you go to the index page, I think I was loading. Oh, there it is. There's a whole bunch of script. If you scroll down, easy, medium, hard, checker. So now I think it was past this. So the checker checked to see if it was a legitimate board. And this, there we go. I created a matrix class that would generate a matrix. Just because object-oriented was the only programming pattern that I could really wrap my head around. So that's how I did it.
There's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
And if you run it with the console on, there's like comments that show what for each tile as it goes, it shows like available digits. And then when it runs into a dead end, it shows how it backs up, like in the.
So, okay, so I was almost there. You do need to back up if you run into. It is possible to run into an issue where you don't have any more digits to work with, and you need to.
Right, you could have 9 legal digits in a row, but then the only number you have left is not legal for the last square. So
Right.
then you got to back up to the previous square and you got to put something new there if there is another new number. So for each square, I keep track of what were available digits, and then I take out the digit that I used. So when you back up to it, if there's anything left, change the number, get rid of the number that you changed it to, and then go forward until you can't, and then keep going back. You just keep going back until you can change a number, change it, keep going forward. And you
Okay.
gotta, and
That was what I was going to attempt to do. That was what made sense to me, but I felt like it was either over-engineered or the wrong solution, but I never went back and.
so years and years ago, when I used to build Flash games, I set out to create a Sudoku solver. And me and my brother who did Sudokus, we just brainstormed about all the strategies that we used to solve Sudokus. And so I just wrote a whole bunch of functions for every strategy we had. And it got close, but it could never quite get there. And I thought, okay, so at the end, I just got to have to guess. So I wrote a way for it to guess. And then I realized, well, I could just guess from the beginning. I don't need to run any of those strategies. You just guess all the way through. And I didn't remember how I had done it, but I remembered the general idea. And that's why I used this approach on this. And I can't quite see my code clearly enough to walk you through it, but
Made me feel better that I was getting there. Maybe even
Yeah. It sounds like it was very, very similar to what you were doing.
another year, I might have had it.
It was just a lot of loops.
Yeah. That it must be really inefficient, right?
No, it goes pretty quick. I mean, if you go to the index page and just click new board, they pop up pretty fast. I think I even put a little timeout in there to give it a breather. Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
That's nice work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if you open up the console, you can, if you scroll up, it kind of goes step by step how it fills it out. And where it says, you know, it's illegal, so it has to go back.
Wow. Okay.
So and I mean, these console logs were there as I was debugging it. You know, I was trying to figure out where things were going wrong. And then I left them in because it was as good as any of the comments I wrote, I felt, in terms of describing what's going on.
For sure. Okay. So the process would be then to take one of these like fully solved matrices and then work backwards and slowly take parts away and make sure that it's still solvable. And that would satisfy that hard one. But you have to make sure as you're randomly taking these out.
Yeah.
You have to try to solve, you have to run a solver each
Right.
time.
Right.
So could you just pick a random number, the length of that matrix, remove it, check it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, add it back in, pick another one, do it again.
Absolutely.
That is how you would have to do it to make a solvable.
Because you already built a solver, didn't you? You built something that checks to see if it's a solvable.
Yes, the thing I built back in Flash was you would take a Sudoku puzzle from the paper, put in the squares that it supplied, and then based on that, it would run and solve the puzzle. And I think it used a strategy similar to this. Like, I think if this started with some numbers, as long as they were legal, you could still do the same process on all the squares that need to be filled in. You just couldn't change any of the numbers that are already there. That, you know, the supplied numbers you couldn't change.
I feel like the hard one would actually be pretty easy once you have this part in there. Or is there something more complex there that I'm not seeing?
So you'd have to run this a large number of times.
With every number that you take out, right?
Right. With every number that you take out. And the minute you run into some kind of ambiguity where it can't be solved cleanly without some kind of guess, then it's no longer like solvable. Right. It's not a valid Sudoku at that point.
Could you make the solver function less complex by having it only check what it needs to, like only check this box, this row, this column? That's all it really needs to check, right? If I remove something, I only need to check, is it valid within this row, this column, or in this box? That way you're not checking the entire puzzle, you're only checking what matters to this specific number that you removed.
Sure. Sure.
Because that would reduce because you don't gotta check every single number. That reduces the computations a little bit. I mean, it might add a couple milliseconds here and there, right?
Yeah, potentially.
I don't think we should worry about how fast it is at all.
Oh, that's fair.
I think if it just never gets done, I think that's what we should
Sure.
worry about.
Sure. Good. I think like if you were actually storing these, you would have some seed value to yank these back out, and you have them stored somewhere, right? So
it's
you
like,
weren't like randomly generating them from zero each time. Like generate a solved one, then ungenerate it to a point where it can be solved. Like I don't know that you would do that if you were like serving somebody a Sudoku.
oh,
You would
right.
probably do that in a large batch and then store it somewhere in a format and then deliver it.
It sounds like what we need to do is we need to get a bunch of Sudoku puzzles, feed it to machine learning algorithm, and that generates the
Sure,
puzzles
sure.
for us.
That's what I thought, like the first, from the get-go. And I definitely, every time I hear an idea for creating Sudokus, I always think to myself, well, but how does it make a fun Sudoku? That's my concern is that I'm sure we could generate some Sudokus, but are they gonna be fun?
Sure.
Sure.
So I don't know, maybe fun and even not tedious, or maybe outside of the scope of what we're trying to do. Because we're not solving them by hand. I know,
Sure.
perhaps some of us would be disappointed if they were keeping this and that.
Sure.
Very cool. Neat code. And then I actually may need to leave. That's will be hungry.
Sure. It has been about an hour. We could probably call it there. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about as far as JavaScript goes for this session? No? Okay. No new.
We can wait for Matt to get out of the bathroom. Wrap it up.
All right. We'll wait. We'll wait for Matt to get back.
We can put him on the spot when he's back.
So you're working with React, right, Doug? Now this is your first time really working with it?
Yeah, we've just started. I mean, a couple of years ago, I did a couple, like the tic-tac-toe tutorial on their site and,
Yep.
you know, got a couple of things working, but it was all just kind of swimming around. I didn't quite, you know, nothing was crystallized. And yeah, now we're just doing like to-do lists and like invoice displayers and simple projects, but I'm starting to see I'm getting excited about it. I'm both intimidated and excited by it. And when I looked into it before, it was all objects, it was all classes, and now it's all functional, which is the way that we're learning it.
At any time, you can continue to use classes. They're still available and it's still there.
Right. My impression was that the industry as a whole has moved towards functional. Is that true?
I don't know how true that is.
Okay.
There is a push for it for sure. But there's still also a lot of class-based components out in the wild. I mean, there's still a lot of jQuery out in the wild, so I don't know how. So coming from like either a vanilla JavaScript or a jQuery background, what sort of things are exciting you about like learning React at this point?
I guess the same kind of thing that excites me about object-oriented, just the idea that you can compartmentalize, create instances of your components, and just the modular aspect, like the building small pieces and then fitting them all together, as opposed to, now I always start with vanilla JavaScript. I sit down and I intend to be very, very organized, but it quickly, gets a little spaghetti-ish. React seems like it's sort of built in to be organized.
Yeah, I think that's true for sure.
I mean, and that might be true of any framework. This is just the first one that I'm really learning.
Cool. Do you have anything new? Did you have anything new that you wanted to share working with JavaScript?
No, nothing that I can share. That's all internal stuff. Deep stuff.
Very, very secret.
Very secret.
Very secret. The third most popular JavaScript framework. Okay.
Yeah, and also it's just a sea of bugs right now,
Right.
as it should be.
All right then. Thanks for coming, everyone, and I'm gonna call it there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting.
What's the next homework?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
Caleb is going to, yeah, we'll go over that actually before I cut. Caleb is going to post the next homework in Slack, hopefully over the next couple of days, potentially over the next month. And I'm going to try to have something ready for next month to actually do a talk. If anybody else comes up with anything before that, feel free to share it in Slack. And we could do 5-10 minutes, whatever you'd like to present, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you need. And that will be sometime, somewhere in June, July, in July. This is June.
Well, I'm probably going to miss that one. They gave us a surprise week off this week, but after this week, my evenings are once again owned by Careers and Code.
Yeah, that 4-day-a-week, was it 3 hours?
Yeah.
3 hours is it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, cruise up on Fridays, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wait, are you guys doing the 4-day work week thing?
No, it's boot camp.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought some companies switching to the 4-day work week. That makes more sense.
No, I was in the previous cohort, so I'm
Okay,
9 to 5 now-ish, but
that makes more sense.
but I have a commitment the third Tuesday of every month, so I can't normally come to this, unfortunately.
And this one's just a weird.
Yeah, so if it's not on the third Tuesday next month, then maybe I'll come again. I don't know. Obviously, I didn't do this project. I wasn't aware of it, but.
Sure. Caleb and I
um,
have talked about moving the meeting, so we'll see about maybe if it gets moved, it gets moved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the surface that I have Slack, so I kind of pay attention somewhat.
Yep.
Enough that I noticed this is moved and I come to it. So sorry I was a bit late. Yeah.
Oh, no problem.
It's encouraging to hear that you're 9 to 5 coming from the program.
Yeah. Yeah, just on contract, but yeah. Hoping it's going to turn into permanent eventually.
Awesome.
So.
All right. Well, I'll at least try to follow on Slack.
Absolutely.